Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC, and we're doing a little shootout between two very popular radios that a lot of people are wondering, are they better than the Sanwas, Futaba's, other radios out there? And this is the Flysky NB-4 Noble. It's been out for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years at this point. Sells for a little under $200. You can typically find it between like $180 and $200. And then we have the newer radio, the Radiolink RC8X, been out for about 4 or 5 months. Sells for a little under $300, around $280 or so, depending on where you pick these up. I will have links in the description below where you can buy one of these. But these are pretty much competitors within, I would say, like the mid-range radio class. A lot of people are wondering which one is better and which one they should buy. So we're going to be talking about that. I have full reviews on both these radios, so if you want to know about them in depth, definitely check those out. I'll have links in the description below where you can get a full comprehensive review. We're just going to be doing a little shootout between the two and explaining which ones have advantages or disadvantages in different areas. So yeah, let's get into the review. First category we're going to be talking about is the features. The Flysky Noble is a pretty good radio. You know, it's a $200 radio. Has all your main normal functionality that you want. Reverse, endpoints, sub-trim. You know, all the typical stuff you would find on a radio. To do a little bit of racing, do a little bit of high-speed runs, or even launches and stuff like that, drag racing, whatever you want. A lot of different functionality. It is fairly more basic than the Radiolink. The Radiolink is probably the most featured radio you can buy, bar none, like across all spectrums. So crazy amount of stuff. 200 model memory. The Noble is only 20. It's even got like FPV, gyro, external smart card, updatable firmware. You can adjust the colors, the fonts, the voices, all that kind of stuff. So very configurable. A little bit more adjustments on the ergonomics as well. So I think the Radiolink has the advantage in this area. It also has a much bigger display, as you can see. You know, probably an inch and a half wider in diameter than the Noble. So yeah, the Radiolink definitely has much more features than the Noble. In terms of design and construction, I think the Noble wins. The Noble is a fantastic feeling radio. It's extremely solid, extremely well crafted. When you hold this in your hand, this feels probably nicer than any other radio out there. And I'm talking even like $500, $600, $700 radios from the big boys. This is a really nice feeling, very solid, very well crafted radio. It does have this bottom battery bank, which is made out of aluminum, it feels like. So it's a 4,300 milliamp hour battery. So it's an external battery. There's also an internal battery that charges it, but it feels really, really good. Construction is really nice. The Radiolink is also pretty good. You know, high quality plastics. Doesn't feel quite as solid. It actually feels lighter than the Flysky, although it is actually 10 grams heavier, but it's a much larger radio. As you can see, it's probably fits bigger hands a little bit better. The weight is a little more, you know, evenly spread out because it is a large radio, whereas the Flysky feels very compact, very solid, very dense within your hand. Within the design and construction category, I do like the Flysky a little bit better. I mean, they both have adjustable radio, so the steering wheels can be flipped over to the other side. You can even adjust it, you know, sort of forward and back to different degrees. The Radiolink, you do have to unbolt this steering wheel and mount it to the other side, but that is an option for those of you that are left-handed. But yeah, definitely within design and construction, I would go with the Flysky. It is the leader in this area. Moving on to the receiver. So this is kind of a big one, honestly. So I use my radios for a lot of different purposes. I do indoor racing with them, 1/10 scale carpet. I do outdoor nitro stuff. I do bashing, crawling, all that kind of stuff. I do think the Flysky has better radios, and the number one reason for that is they do sell these tiny little hard case antenna-less receivers, the FGR4S. So this is a tiny little receiver, really suitable for indoor 1/10 scale racing. On the Radiolink side, they do have these new V2.1 receivers, but for the hard case ones, this is pretty much the smallest one they make, the R8FG. This is something you would have to mount within your vehicle if you want to do indoor racing. They do make some, you know, tiny little ones, something like this, but it's, you know, it's not a hard case. You would mount it more for aircraft or maybe mini Z racing or something like that. Tiny little receivers, but I did ask that they make small indoor antenna-less receivers because something like this is quite massive. It is dual antenna and a little bit less useful to use, in my opinion. Now, price-wise, I do think the Flysky's are a little bit more. They're pretty close, you know, probably between $20, $30. Same with the Radiolink, you know, probably on the low 20s. So the Radiolinks are a little bit cheaper if you want the telemetry versions and that kind of thing. So, but Flysky-wise, because they have much wider range of receivers, and I think they're a little bit more useful, I do think the receivers are better on the Flysky side. Performance-wise, is kind of the big area that I had a lot of controversy with both these radios. Starting with the Flysky, when I reviewed the Flysky, they did not, really perform as well as I thought. I was running an older firmware, whatever was at the time, I think .100. I have since updated to the latest firmwares on both of these. So this is running 1.0.101, I believe. This is 1.15. I also updated the receivers. Now, in terms of performance, I did run both of these in sort of a high digital frequency range. So this is running at 333 hertz on my digital servos that can actually handle that. The Radiolink with the new V2.1 receivers and the new firmware, you can actually run these about the same, 333 hertz. They call it 3 millisecond. They also have a 4 millisecond range. The Flysky, actually, you can go all the way up to, I think, even over 1,000 hertz if you have servos that can handle that. I don't have any of those super high-end servos, but even at 333 hertz or about 3 millisecond, it is quite fast. I do find the Flysky actually to be pretty good now in this point. So I did have concerns about dead spots and expo effect and stuff in my review. They seem to have fixed the dead spot issue. So when I reached out to them, or actually they emailed me after they saw my review and said they had identified a problem. They didn't tell me whether it was a hardware or software problem or what it was. They just said that they did find an issue and that they were going to fix it. So it seems like it was a firmware issue, because with the new firmware, I do find this to drive really, really well, extremely responsive. I don't have that dead spot issue that I found before. I do still have a little of a weird expo effect on this, so I do have to run -5% expo to get it to feel, close to right. It's not perfect in my opinion. Still, it doesn't feel completely linear to me, but it is really, really good. Both these radios with their latest firmware and their latest receivers, I think, are really good. Radiolink drives really, really well. I don't think it's quite as responsive as the Flysky. I don't know what it is. It feels really good and on par with other high-end radios out there, but the Flysky does feel very good. Just the expo is a little bit weird. But in the performance category, I would have to say the Flysky actually is the winner. The Radiolink, I also had issues because the original receiver and radio firmware on this radio, when it was first released, really could only do about 66 hertz, I think, or 60 hertz. It was pretty slow, really meant for analog servos. And but with the release of the V2.1s, I do think the performance is up there with other radios. But in the performance category, I actually think the Flysky is a little bit better. It is a very, very responsive radio. They seem to have fixed all the issues and concerns I had. So yeah, in that area, I think the Flysky wins. Now, battery-wise is another area where I think there's a bit of a difference. The Flysky does have that external battery, high capacity, 4,300 milliamp hours in addition to the internal battery. It'll last a really long time, even with the display all the way on bright and stuff. The Radiolink does not have an external battery. It's either going to run off like a 3S pack or 4 AA's or whatever, or I think it's 8 AA's actually, but I run a 3S Life Pack. It runs reasonably well, but I do turn down the display on this thing a little bit just so it's not burning through the batteries quite as high. But the Flysky definitely is the leader in the battery category. This thing will last a long time, no issues, huge battery capacity, no concerns about battery life. Whereas the Radiolink, you are going to have to charge a little more frequently, a little more often than the Flysky. So in the battery category, I'm definitely going to go with the Flysky. Now, the next category is really the value, and talking about display-wise, the Flysky is quite a bit smaller. I think the display is not as nice. The menuing system on the Radiolink, I think, is quite a bit better, and the display is obviously quite a bit better. So, yeah, within this area, I do think the Radiolink has a much better display. It is actually usable outdoors. I would say the Flysky is pretty much unusable outdoors. It's just not bright enough. The sun will kind of wash it out. The Radiolink's not perfect. It's not best, but it is definitely better than the Flysky if you turn up the display, so it is much more usable. So yeah, display-wise, menu system-wise, I think the Radiolink is a little bit easier to use, but that display is not that great outdoors or for bashing or crawling, that kind of thing. So I would probably go with the Radiolink in terms of display menu system. I do like the sort of the icons and stuff, the way you navigate through the menu system, a lot better than the Radiolink. The Radiolink is a little bit harder to use, but does have a really nice sort of home screen that shows you all the current settings on your radio. So display, menu, all that kind of stuff, I'm going to go with the Radiolink. And then price-wise, like I mentioned, Flysky is under $200. Really good value. Radiolink under $300, actually also a really good value. When you compare to them other radios you can get, like you look at this and you look at like a Spectrum that's DX5C or something that's about the same price, about $180, $190. This is a much better radio than the Spectrum DX5C. If you look at this compared to, you know, a Sanwa or a Futaba or something in that $300 price range, Radiolink has way more features, much nicer display, a lot more capability, 8 channels. You know, it's obviously a great value. So value-wise, I think it's a tie. I think the Radiolink is $100 more, but you get more value there, much more switches, controls, configurability, bigger screen, FPV, that kind of thing. Flysky at $200 is probably the best radio you can get for under $200. So both of them excellent values, and I think you get what you pay for. So final thoughts on these radios. Which one would I think is the best? What would I recommend? I would actually say they're a little bit different. They have different pros and cons, like I mentioned throughout this review. The Flysky, I think, is a much better indoor radio, much better like indoor racing radio especially, and the main reason is honestly due to the receivers. The receivers on this thing are suitable for indoor racing. The performance is there. I think you can totally use this as a race radio, no concerns there anymore. The Radiolink, I think, is a better, you know, sort of long-range vehicle radio. You know, if you're doing high-speed runs, if you're doing outdoor stuff like nitro racing, that kind of thing, something where you don't need those tiny little receivers, bigger vehicles, I think it's probably better in that class. The display is going to work much better outdoor. So I think between the two of them, for indoor racing 1/10 scale, I would go with the Noble. Outdoor type of stuff, high-speed stuff, bashing, I think either could work, but you're going to be bashing outdoors primarily, so I think the Radiolink is a little bit better radio there, and the receiver is not going to hurt you as much having these big receivers. If you're indoor, you really don't want to be using something like this. Hopefully Radiolink will come out with a smaller receiver. I did suggest that they do that. So yeah, that's pretty much my comparison between the Flysky and the Radiolink. The great thing is both of these, I think, have their performance issues resolved with the latest firmwares. I do recommend definitely updating your radios if you're running an older firmware. If you want to get the higher performance of these new V2.1s, you can get that and really get the, you know, high frame rate, low latency performance that you would want. Flysky, again, with the new firmware, it pretty much resolved all the main issues I had. Still a little bit of a weird expo thing, but you know, it's 99% there, and I think you can mostly resolve that with a little bit of expo change. So that's my thoughts on these two radios. Let me know what you think. Do you have a personal favorite between these two? I think they're both great radios. I think they've pretty much got everything under control that I had concerns about in the past. Excellent radios. I had no issues with performance now, no issues with anything breaking, tons of features, really easy to use. And of course, both of these have the really nice full color displays that most of the competition do not have. So hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe buttons. Look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.